Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into one of the most powerful and frankly terrifying prophecies in the Old Testament, the vision of the Lord's sword in Ezekiel chapter 21.
So let's jump right in. The whole thing kicks off with this incredibly direct and ominous command. God tells the prophet Ezekiel, "Turn around, face Jerusalem, the very heart of your people, and you are going to deliver a message." And let me tell you, it is not a message of comfort.
All right, so our first section here covers just verses 1 and 2, and right away they establish exactly who this message is for. This isn't some vague warning to the world. No, this is aimed squarely at the southern kingdom of Judah and its capital city.
Now, to really get what's going on, you need a little bit of history. When the text says the land of Israel, you have to know it's talking specifically about Judah. Why? Because the northern kingdom, which was called Samaria, had already been wiped out by the Assyrians more than 100 years earlier. So this prophecy, it's about a brand new threat, Babylon, and it's coming straight for Jerusalem. Okay, moving into verses 3 through 7, this is where the prophecy unleashes its central terrifying symbol, God's sword. And listen, this isn't just a metaphor for a foreign army, this is presented as a weapon drawn by God himself.
Verse 3, wow. It delivers a line that must have been absolutely shocking to hear. God says this sword, which, yes, represents the invading Babylonian army, is not going to make a distinction. It's going to cut down both the righteous and the wicked. This just underscores the total, all-encompassing nature of this national judgment.
And this gets at a really tough truth about what the text calls national judgment. When an entire nation is facing a disaster on this scale, even the most faithful people can get swept up in it. I mean, think about it. Righteous figures like Daniel, Ezekiel, and Jeremiah, they all suffered. They went through exile and incredible hardship. Their personal faith, yeah, that secured their standing with God, but it didn't give them a free pass from the collective catastrophe.
Then you get to verse 5, and God says something about his sword that just makes you stop and think. It shall not return any more. This brings up a really profound and honestly unsettling question. What does that mean? Is this a state of permanent conflict?
You know, there's a fascinating parallel to this idea from a completely different context. It's from an old account in early Latter-day Saint history. It talks about the ancient sword of Laban being seen in a vision, unsheathed, with that exact message. It kind of reinforces this idea of a continuous state of judgment in the world, one that's only going to end in some final future resolution. Okay, so the prophecy isn't just about words. It's about to get way more intense. Ezekiel's job now goes beyond just speaking. He is commanded to become a living, breathing performance of the anguish his people are about to feel. In verse 6, he's told to sigh with the breaking of thy loins. I mean, what an incredibly visceral image. This is a performance of crippling grief. He has to physically act out how the nation's strength, its very core, is just going to collapse in utter terror when this judgment finally hits. And you know, this whole idea of a prophet physically performing a message of doom, it's not unique to Ezekiel. The historian Josephus tells this hauntingly similar story about another man, centuries later, who foretold the destruction of Jerusalem by the Romans. So, around the year 62 AD, this man, Jesus, son of Ananus, starts walking the streets of Jerusalem, just constantly crying out this message of woe. For years, day and night, he just warns of this voice coming against the city and the temple. The officials arrested him, they beat him, but nothing they did could stop his constant lament, woe, woe to Jerusalem. He literally became a walking, talking symbol of the city's coming fate, right up until the Roman siege began, when he himself was killed. All right, so now, in verses 8 through 17, the prophecy circles back to its central image, the sword. But this time it shifts into this poetic, incredibly intense description of the blade itself, almost personifying it as this relentless, glittering agent of pure destruction. Listen to the language in verse 9. That repetition, a sword, a sword. It creates this terrifying rhythm, almost like a drum beat, signaling that the slaughter is coming. And this isn't just any old weapon. It has been meticulously prepared for its job. So the weapon has a two-part purpose. First, it is sharpened to be lethally effective, to cause a massive slaughter. And second, it is furbished or polished so that it glitters. Not because it's beautiful, but to inspire absolute terror in anyone who sees it coming. And verse 10 makes something crystal clear. This judgment doesn't care about earthly power. That phrase, the rod of my son, is a direct reference to the royal scepter of Judah's kings, the line of David. The prophecy is saying this sword just scoffs at that authority. Kings, princes, they're all going down just like everyone else.
And here we go again. Ezekiel has to physically perform the nation's grief. He's told to cry and howl, to smite his own thigh, which was a classic sign of deep anguish, and to clap his hands together, an act that basically means it's a done deal. This is certain and it is final.
Then verse 14 just ramps up the terror even more. The text says the sword will be doubled the third time. So think about what that means. This isn't going to be one quick hit. No, this is going to be a relentless, devastating series of attacks, wave after wave of destruction, until there is absolutely nothing left.
And then we get to the climax. In verse 17, God himself mirrors the prophet's action. He declares, "I will also smite mine hands together." It's like a divine stamp of approval on the judgment. That action signifies that his fury will be completely satisfied, the purpose will be accomplished, and the verdict is absolutely, irrevocably final. So what does it really mean when a prophecy isn't just spoken, but has to be performed by both man and God?